Sounds good.
I'm delighted today to be speaking to Dan Pfister. Dan was a co-founder at the Business Source Corporation, where he helped generate over 50,000 customers. While at the Business Source, Dan created a customer win-back process. And based on his success, he founded WinBack Labs. He's also the author of Million Dollar WinBack. Dan, a very warm welcome to you.
Thanks so much for having me on, Jenny. I appreciate it.
I've been really looking forward to talking to you, Dan, because I think this is a massively overlooked area. So perhaps we could just kick off by explaining, why did you decide to set up WinBack Labs?
Well, back in 2016, in my previous business, we had like attrition just went through the roof. And it was my job to fix that problem. And so we had always like whenever we lost a customer, we always sent out an email or something. It was pretty ad hoc. It wasn't very, organized or we didn't do anything consistent. And things got so bad in 2016 that one of my partners said, Dan, this is your bailiwick, take care of it. And so I did. And what I basically did is I took everything I knew about WinBack and kind of like threw it into this big barrel and created a WinBack program. And I I really wasn't optimistic that much would happen because, we'd already approached our past customers before. The only reason I was doing this is because one of my partners pushed me to do it. And, they didn't come back when we asked them before. So why would they now? So I thought it was a poor use of my time, quite frankly. Anyway, we launched the program, 57x ROI right out of the gate. And within 2 weeks, it was like this was the fastest, easiest money I had made in like 20 years of marketing. It was nuts, and it was just like so inexpensive. And we can get into all of that. Anyway, I became just enamored with this. I mean, this was something new. I had never known there was so much value locked in our lost customers. I thought gone today meant gone forever. So anyway, I wanted to learn more, so I optimized the process, and then I still wanted to learn more. So I did a customer win back benchmark study and got to talk to all these people who did win back. And I tried and I kind of started to find out, like, what is the average win back campaign? How much money does it generate? How are sales cycles? What is the average cost? All of these things, right? And so what I found was a lot of really interesting data, and I got to talk to a lot of really interesting people about WinBack. And then after that was over, I thought, geez, I want to keep learning more. So I created a podcast, a WinBack podcast, and I got to keep talking to people, really smart people about their WinBack programs. And now what I've done is I've taken everything that I've learned and I've put it into a book called Million Dollar WinBack.
What a great story. Okay, so many questions. Uh, First of all, I think that was so brave to go back to people that you'd already contacted. So we'll probably dive into that a bit later. But just for the listeners, can you share some of those statistics? You said that that particular ROI was 57 times
Yeah.
ROI. Can you share some other statistics that you quote or you found from the win? And in fact, Dan, just so you know, I quoted your customer win back survey in a webinar and a
Oh,
couple of
really?
that I did, yeah, because I was blown away. So I'd love you to share with the listeners those figures.
Sure. So, um, the first thing I wanted to know was what kind of revenue do companies generally get? So, the study mainly focused on small to medium-sized businesses. And what we found was that the average win-back campaign generated $485,000. For like small groups, like the smallest group was a consulting group, and they made 70,000. It was a one-person consulting, it wasn't a group, it was a single-person consulting company. And um, another company did 1.5 million. They were a small HR company, but on average, 485,000 bucks. And larger companies were in the millions. And then when you look at like Starbucks and Netflix, they make tens of millions with their win back. So anyway, so that's the average return. But so why does it generate so much revenue? And there's two reasons. The first reason is about 1 in 4 past customers will come back. That's what my study found, and it was corroborated by a study in the Harvard Business Review, and they found that 1 in 3 customers come back. So, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, significant numbers will come back. And what's really amazing is that when they come back, their lifetime value more than doubles. So if they spent $1,000 with you before they left, they're going to spend at least $1,000 when they come back. And so that's what my study found. They found that 96% of the time they're going to double lifetime value or more. The Harvard study, that was of 40,000 lost customers, they found that they found the same thing. They found actually that the second time around they generate 110% of what they did the first time around. So you got this fantastic combination of lots of people coming back, and when they come back, they're big spenders. And so, uh, that's very exciting. And like I said, all that data is corroborated with other studies in Harvard Business that were featured in the Harvard Business Review. We also found that they're very low cost. For an SMB, it costs less than $5,000 to run a campaign. It's because usually it's just done with phone or email outreach. And so you think, okay, obviously the ROI is going to be high, right? Because you have very low costs and pretty nice returns. So the average ROI for an SMB was 97x, right? 485K is what they bring in, and it costs $5,000. That's 97 X ROI. The ROI, what the study found, it ranges from about 32x on the low end to 182x on the high end. And so on the low end, you've got companies that have got to spend a lot of money to win back customers. So there's that HR company I was telling you about. They had to wine and dine entire HR teams. So their cost for their win back was $50,000. And they made 101.5 million out of that. So that was a 30x ROI. A friend of mine, Ron Contorno, he did a win back campaign for the Texas Rangers. That's a major league ball club in the States. And he got 181x ROI. And that was basically done with direct mail. So direct mail is like, $2 or $3 a pop, and you're pulling in, thousands of dollars. So that ROI was quite high. I'll just give you 2 more quick stats. One, sales 3 times faster. And the reason sales are so much faster with WinBack is, you know how hard it is to engage a cold prospect, right? It can take you dozens of times before they pick up the phone or answer your email. Well, with WinBack, the average engagement is 1 to 3 touches. So 1 to 3 touches, and most people will respond. You don't need to spend a lot of time qualifying them. So because they've already done business with you before, so they had a need in the past. They probably still have it now, or they'll likely have it in the future. You've already educated them on your product, so you don't need to do that. That saves time. You don't need to build the relationships. You don't need to build trust, right? You've already done that. Closing is way faster too, because you've already been through the process once. You've already ironed out all those kinks. So that's why sales happen. So you can basically close 3 past customers in the time it would take you to do 1 new customer. And sales are easier. You know so much about them, right? Whoever knows the most about the customer wins. And they've bought from you before, so at minimum, you know how they buy, and you've got usage data. And if you work with them, if it's like a larger transaction, your people have worked with their people, who the decision makers are, when the buying window opens. So there's all that stuff. And also, sales is a trust game, right? People buy from people who they're familiar with and they trust. Well, you've already earned a level of trust with your past customers because they did business with you. So that's something you don't have with cold prospects. Relationships, you've got relationships within that company. And, 1 time out of 3, like a third of the time, people will actually tell you exactly what it takes to win back their customers. And that's from work that Jill Griffin did. She wrote the last big book on WinBack 20 years ago. And yeah, so those are the basic stats.
Well, I'm delighted. First of all, thank you for sharing. These are very compelling numbers. And I'm sure people listening to this is thinking, oh my gosh, we've got some really great lapsed clients, so I need to do something. Um, or I've got other questions, but I suppose people are probably screaming, saying, what's the best way to do this? Dan obviously has got a lot of experience. He's seen lots of companies doing it. What works, what doesn't, what shouldn't I do?
Right.
Can you give us
Well,
some steers?
sure. So the thing is that you just don't lead with like a discount or something like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with discounting. Don't get me wrong, but the key is you've got to understand why people left, and you've got to understand what it'll take to win them back. And so um, that's the key. So let me just step back. Let me just give you a quick overview of the process. So there's really three steps. First, you want to identify your best lost customers, the ones you want to, that are worth spending time on. Then you want to understand them, and then you do your win back. So when you want to identify them, you you want to find the ones that are most likely to return and the ones that can have the most potential to generate revenue. So we've got a propensity model which is very complex that figures all this out. But at its essence, you've got people who left more recently are more likely to come back. So there's the probability. Okay, go for more recent. And then who's the most valuable? Well, past lifetime value, right? I remember as mentioned before, people's lifetime value doubled. So go for people who had a higher lifetime value before, right? So if you just compare you take a look at all your people, and you rank them by recency, like how close it was, how short a period of time before they left, and you cross-reference that with their past lifetime value, and you're going to get this whole group of people, and you say, there's my list. Okay, so that's how you identify your best prospects. Now, after you identify them, you want to understand them, and this is foundational to win back. The better you understand your past customer, the more of them you're going to win back. And so we've got a what I call win back root cause analysis. And at its essence is um, first we talk to our team members. Like say you've got 100 lost customers, and let's just say that you're a B2B SaaS company, okay? And so you talk to maybe customer success or customer service people, and you ask them, why do you think people are leaving? What do you think it'll take to win them back? Who do you think is most win backable? Who do we not want? You ask them all these questions, right? So there's going to be a bunch of people that on that list that maybe you really don't want back. Maybe they were a big pain, maybe they were unprofitable. And then there's other people that you really do want back, who you think you're going to have a good shot at winning back. So you modify your list after you do that internal work. So now you've kind of refined your list down to who you really want to go after. And then you ask them, what would it take? Like, where did things go sideways? How did things mess up? Or did they even mess up? What kind of value would it take for you to come back? All those kind of things, right? So basically you want to find out why they left and what it'll take to win them back. And after about 15 to 20, maybe 25 conversations, you're going to start hearing the same thing over and over again. And as soon as you start hearing the same thing over again, that part of the research is done. Okay. And typically, what you're looking for is the top 2 or 3 reasons why people left, and the top 2 or 3 things it'll take to win them back. So now you've got the big rocks. Now you know for real what people are concerned about. You're not guessing. You're not this is real life data. And so then what you do is you reach out to all of your lost customers on that list, okay? And you ask them, you say, listen, these are the top 3 reasons why we think you may have left. These are the top 3 reasons why we think you might want to come back. Just give us the number one on each one, right? It's just like a simple multiple choice questions. And now you're going to find, oh, 70% of the people thought this was number one. And 30% thought this was number two. So in your messaging, in your offer, these are the things you hit. Does that make sense? I can go a
Yes.
whole level deeper, but
This is fantastic. And just so you know, Dan, they're kind of small to medium-sized agencies, creative agencies. So these are typically 1 to 5 million turnover, agency owners and account managers that are listening to this show.
oh, okay.
And they obviously are the ones that, customer success, they maybe are the ones that are managing that relationship and know why the client left. So this all makes perfect sense. So please do continue. And if you have any examples of, I don't know, creative agency that you've worked with that you can share as well, it'd be great.
Um, if I can think of something that I can share while we talk, I will share definitely. Um, so okay, so now you've identified the people that you'd like to go after. You understand what it'll take to win them back. So then what you do is you create an offer. First of all, you if there's some problems, fix what is fixable, mitigate what is mitigatable, and then the rest you can't do about. So you leave those off to the side. And then you try to create an offer that would be appealing to them. So the offer, um, if you find that, there's something that you're not offering that your competitors are. So when you're talking to your lost customers, you might find that a lot of them went to competitor A. And you ask them, well, why did you go to competitor A? We've got like 50 competitors. Why them? And if you start hearing that, well, there's a particular functionality that they offer, you know, that's something you're going to have to really look at. The thing is that our businesses, everything changes so fast. The markets shift, they evolve so fast. And if you're not aware of where your customers are going and why, um, you're kind of like blind in one way. So this whole understanding process, the surveying process is so critical because this gives you an insight into what you need to do. And you might find that there's simply one competitor out there that is just undercutting you on price. And the only thing you need to do is give them a discount. Um, and it doesn't have to be a permanent one either. Okay. Like I stopped using Zoom and Zoom came back to me with like a whatever 25% off offer. I took them up on it and um I don't know, it's only for 1 year or whatever, and I've stayed with them. And the reason I left Zoom in the first place was because of a problem I had with it. And this is a big thing, is that so often you'll find that it's just a customer service issue, you know? And if it's simply a customer service issue, or if there is a misunderstanding between one of your reps and one of the customers, when you reach out with empathy and you ask them, where did things go sideways? You give them an opportunity to share how they feel. And now when you understand how they feel, you can show that you care, that this matters to you. And so often relationships can be healed in this way. Relationships are strengthened through adversity. So if you had a little bit of adversity and you take responsibility and you fix what is fixable, so often you get customers that oh, I just had a story that I actually can tell. Now I
Okay.
can share about this on this exact topic. And if I'm going too deep into any of this, let me know because I can.
This is great. This is really,
Okay.
really good. Thank you.
Okay. So there's a lady on the one came on my podcast. Her name is Megan Bowen. She's the CEO of Refine Labs. And Years ago, she worked for a company called Managed by Q. I think I forget what her position was, but she basically um, was like on top of the people who did customer success. And a customer had left, a big customer. These were big maintenance contracts they had. And so this one customer left. They said, and whenever a customer churns, Megan wanted to understand why they churned so that she could do better in the future, right? So she called them up and she said, uh, I'd like to chat with you. I'd like to see, where things went wrong, and I would like to, fix whatever we can. This isn't a sales call. I just like to really understand where things went. So what happened was, the other person took the call, and uh, what they found was that they just had like three service failures in a row, and the other person said, "Forget it, we're gone. Like we've been more than patient with you." Megan, totally understood where she was coming from. She got a really good idea of exactly what went wrong and why it went wrong, or how it went wrong, I should say. So what Megan did then is she thanked her for the feedback, and she asked if she could call her back, the other woman back in 3 or 4 months. A month later, Megan had taken action on those problems that woman had told her about, and she sent her a note saying, "Thank you so much for what you said. We value what you said, and we took action on it. This is what we did." And she sent her flowers, thanking her for sharing that feedback. A couple months later, they had their scheduled phone call. Megan said, the other woman said, "Thank you for sending the flowers. That was so sweet." Um, she said that I'm going to condense this story a bit. Okay, so she said, um, uh, just trying to cut out. I don't want to cut out anything this is too relevant. So so the woman said, "I was actually thinking about calling you because this other group, they treated us like gold for the first 3 months. Now things are starting to slip up. And I was thinking about giving you a call." And Megan said, "Well, tell them what you're telling me about where they slipped up. It took a lot for you to shift vendors. Like, don't just come back. Like, give them a chance to do better." So anyway, the woman said, "Okay, fine, I'll do that." And then a couple weeks later, Megan got a phone call. She said, "I've had it. I'm done with them. I want to come back with you." And she had all these other vendors she could have gone to, right? But she chose Megan. And why did she choose to go back to Megan? Because Megan took action on their problems, even though they weren't a customer anymore. She didn't force her into being one back, right? So this company came back, and not only did they come back, but they're in all these different groups, right? They go to all the same conferences, and then she spreads the word about how fantastic Megan and Megan's company is. So she got all kinds of business after that. So anyway, that's one story, and I'm thinking about more stories that I can share. But anyway, so there's one idea that puts a little depth into the process.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because the equivalent would be a client services director in my industry who absolutely would understand if a client left. They would know who they were, why they left, and could do something similar. So thank you for kind of painting that picture. And I think that's really, really useful for people listening. I've got a question for you, Dan. In our business, because they're essentially consulting businesses,
Mhm.
often a lot of agencies pitch for business, which takes a lot of effort and time, and they might not win the business, but they've had that connection with the client. They might have had a chemistry meeting, a pitch meeting, they might have met the team. Have you got any evidence to show that it would be worth, if they lost the pitch, going back to the client a couple of months later and saying something like, "How's it working out with your selected vendor?" Do you have any data to show that that works?
I don't have any data myself. However, I have talked to people who have told me that they can't share their data because it's internal data. But the idea is that it's very consistent that their best prospects are what this gentleman called the graveyard. That's what they call the graveyard. And there's a saying in the States where the graveyard is a gold mine. And that's exactly what you're talking about. These people have shown interest enough to talk to you. You know about their situation. Um, when somebody goes in with a new company, um, it's always new, and new is very powerful. But after 2 or 3 months, when that aura of new has been worn off, you really know if this agency is doing what they said they were going to do. Are they really as great as does the pitch match their results, and how they actually act? And what you'll find is after a certain period of time, people will be much more amenable to chatting with you. And um, and so I think all I can say is emphatically yes. Emphatically yes. Go after, but do it with the people. Start with the people who you had the very best relationships with right
Mm.
off the bat, because they'll be most amenable to chatting with you. Let them know right off the bat that this isn't a sales call. You're trying to understand so you can do better in the future, just like Megan did.
Mm.
Um, and you know, there's there's so much involved here. When somebody starts a relationship, they're sticky. People don't just like you one day and not like you the next day. There's always something there. And when you trying to grasp from further points, sorry, I keep slipping away. Um,
Don't worry.
but but relationships are sticky. And so, oh, I know what I was going to say. So you can frame this another way. You can frame this in terms of a win-loss analysis. Okay. So you go out and you lost a customer. I'm sorry, you lost a prospect. They went for somebody else. And typically what we do is we guess, right? We think, oh, you know, they went to these people because they gave them a better price or something. Or if you won them, you just assume, oh, it's our great selling skills, our great presentation, and all this. You don't know why people bought. That's all. That's the bottom line. You can guess, and you might make a very good and educated guess, but there's a um, uh, Kean McLaughlin. He's a big expert on WinBack, and he says that there's only a small percentage of the time do you really know why people buy. Um, uh, there's a professor in Chicago, Epley is his name, and he did a study where he said what he found was that for people you only know what they're thinking or feeling like 20% of the time. And for people really well, like spouses or parents, you're only right 30% of the time. So even with people we know really well, we're wrong 2/3 of the time. So you've got to ask. And Rob Hartnett, he had this fantastic story that really made me think that doing this win-loss is so important. And what he did is he told me this story about a about a group who had won this huge contract, and they assumed they won it because of how great they were and because of their presentation, all these things, right? And and the woman who won the contract, it was a huge feather in her cap. And when it was time for renewal, they didn't renew. And she called them up and she said, like, why wouldn't you renew? Like we're giving you exactly what you want. And they said, well, no, the reason you won the contract was because the lead your biggest competitor pulled out for some reason. The second best competitor wasn't good for another reason. The reason you got the job was because the foreign currency, because of the country you're in, the conversion made it so that you were extremely competitive. And look, she's really smart. Her whole team's really smart. They did a great job, but they didn't realize that the key factor in that win was this. And if they would have known that, if they would have gone to that customer and said, you chose us, this is fantastic. We'd like to understand why. so that we can fulfill on these
Mm,
unvoiced expectations and all these other things, right? And so she knew that. Um, you know, what she would have made sure that the price was exactly the way it was before, and she would have also gained the strengths that her competitors had that they valued also.
very interesting. You said that earlier on, if you're going to go back to old clients or lapsed clients, let's say, recency was one of the key factors.
Yep.
What kind of recency? Can you put a number on it? Is it a year, 6 months, 2 years? Is there a
Well, I hate to give you an it depends answer, but I'm gonna give you because I think it's instructive. Um, in my other business, we had tens of thousands of customers. And so we were able to get a lot of data very fast. But even if you've only got a small number of customers, if you do this work that I'm talking about, you're going to get, within 6 months, a year, you're going to get some pretty good data. And this is what you're going to find. If you're a subscription business and what you're selling is, say, under a couple $100 a month, 3 months is we found that to be a really nice sweet spot. Other companies, you might have a year-long contract, okay? Just because you got a year-long contract doesn't mean the next whoever they've gone to's got a year-long contract. Doesn't mean they can't get out of it. So check back in 3 months to see how things are going. So you said, how long do you wait? Well, you don't have to know how long to wait, but you know how long to check in, right? So if you're an agency and you think, okay, how long would it take for them to really get a good idea if these other people can deliver? And then you wait that long.
Mm,
Also, if they're transitioning out to another vendor, help them like crazy to
mm,
move everything that you've done over to the new vendor. And I can give you a quick story about that. Or
go ahead.
okay, so um, there's this a company, and they are in this huge IT services. Okay. So they had this contract with La Quinta Hotels, 1,100 hotels, right? Huge contract. So they put the contract out to bid. A low cost provider got it. My friend Greg lost the contract. Okay. So what he did is he got all of his reps to help them move, like the client that they just lost, help them move to the low cost provider. He had them working with them day and night for like weeks, weekends and everything, getting them to make sure that the transition was as smooth as possible. And so that gave them a lot of goodwill, right? So anyway, so they did that, and then he told his reps, keep in contact, constantly keep in contact with everyone. Okay. So they did that. And this is they've got Greg has 200 major competitors. This is a crazy cutthroat business. And so what happened was about 3 months later, funny how 3 months keeps coming up, but 3 months later, Greg's reps started showing dissatisfaction with this new vendor. So what Greg did was he found out. Again, I got to compress this story. So what Greg found out was that there was so much dissatisfaction that they decided they were going to go and find a new vendor. And so what happened was they went directly to Greg. There's 200 other competitors they could go to, but they went directly to Greg. And why did they go to Greg? Because they knew that he could do the job, right? And and he took such good care of them, even when they were leaving. He thought, who else is going to do that, right? So they had this certainty that Greg was going to do the job. He was going to do it well, and he had already showed that he goes above and beyond. So this was a no-brainer for them, right? They didn't have to go and put the job out to bid again. They didn't have to go to an unknown quantity. Like, Marcus says the C-suite wants certainty. Well, they had certainty with Greg. They didn't have certainty with anybody else. So they went back to him. The job didn't even go out for bid.
Love
And
that.
and And there's that woman I was mentioning earlier, Jill Griffin. She's like the queen of WinBack. She did unbelievable research, her and Michael Lowenstein, and she's got all kinds of stories like that too.
I love that. So help them leave and also make sure you follow them if they are a client that's leaving you, for example. Maybe it didn't break down for any reason, maybe they moved on. So it's definitely worth following them. Would you say that this is all about, I mean, because the account managers that are listening to this that work in agencies are responsible for that client relationship.
Yep.
If it breaks down for any reason, obviously they feel very, very worried about it. And I suppose the way I'm thinking now is if I was to say to an account manager, oh yeah, well, you can win them back, there might be some hesitation,
Mhm.
some fear of, looking silly and just some reticence about and agency owners as well about recontacting old clients. The way you've put your process in place, the step was first of all, reach out to all your lapsed clients to say, why did you leave?
Yep.
Right? Those clients that you first contact to say, why did you? I suppose I've got so many questions. If they don't respond to you, do you then ask again? How many times do you ask before you think, oh, okay, they really didn't want to ever work with us again or ever see me again because we screwed it up so much?
Well, you're asking a lot of questions here. I'm sorry, there's a lot of implications in that question. Okay, so I'll just blast through a few things, and if you want to dig into any of them, let me know. There's a saying that goes something like, your unhappiest customers are your greatest source of learning, because they will tell you things that everyone else is too, polite to tell you. So that's the worst case. Most of the people we deal with, they're decent human beings who are not going to just yell and scream at you and tear a strip out of you. Most people, um, they'll be understanding if you're understanding. They might be upset with you, but if you show that you care, some and show some empathy, um, that'll go a long way. Actually, why don't we dig into that just a little bit? Okay. So one of the big reasons why you want to reach out to unhappy people is they're out there in the wild saying bad things about you, right? There's all this they're talking to their friends, and if they say, "Hey, what do you think about agency X?" Let's say, "Well, this is the stuff that happened to them, and they did this, and then they didn't seem to care to fix it, or whatever they say." So you got these people out there in the wild saying bad things about you. You
Mm.
don't want that. I mean, so much of B2B work it's word of mouth, and or even like, okay, I'll just say that's enough to be said with that. So when you um there's two pieces of human psychology that are at play when we do this sort of thing. The first thing is the pratfall effect. I'm sorry, the first thing is the peak end rule. The peak end rule says that how you feel about an experience is determined by the peak of that experience and the end. Okay. So the last thing that happened with that client is they were so upset that they left. So the end experience sucks. Okay. So that's one of the two biggest things they're going to focus on. So if you reach out and you say, we're sorry that this happened, and they don't even respond, like if you just leave a voicemail or send an email, if they don't even respond, at least there's some level there, right? There's something you said, you've been able to say your piece, because people hear the voicemails, they might not respond, they see the emails, they might not respond, but that's there. But most of the time, people will, if you frame it like Megan did, like I've been mentioning, as can you help us to do better? And and you can even incentivize them to do that, right? Because if they don't think there's anything in it for them, put something in it there for them. Okay. So when you reach out and you say, I'd like to understand where things went wrong, and you actually talk to them, the peak end rule kicks in, and at the end of it, they're feeling better about you because you heard their story, you showed empathy, you showed you care. And then what you do is, if there's anything of that that you can fix or take care of, you do. And when you do that, it kicks in something called the pratfall effect. And basically, what that says is that if you fix something, fix a problem, people see you as more competent and they like you more. And so you combine you just got rid of that crappy end experience to some degree. People see you as more competent and they like you more. A lot more people will be open to coming back. That's what happened with Megan, right? Megan went in, she said she showed caring and empathy and heard the story. So she kicked in the peak end rule. So there was a new end experience. Then she took what that lady said was wrong. Megan fixed all of that, and she told them that she fixed all of that. So now she's seen as competent for fixing that. And now those are the two psychological principles that opened the door to Megan's WinBack. She was so much more like Megan's, she's brilliant and she's smart. So that was already there, but she's still working with this brand that failed the customer. And she turned all that around with those are the two psychological principles behind it. So you're going to improve brand reputation. So there's going to be less people out there in the wild saying bad things about you. And with Megan's case, she turned it all around so they're actually saying good things. So if you're afraid to go out and talk to people, find somebody in your firm who isn't close to that customer. Say, maybe it's a customer success manager, maybe it's somebody else, who's not emotionally tied to that customer leaving, and say, listen, we know things went sideways. We'd like to understand why. And if it's not emotionally charged for that person, it's also not emotionally charged for the client who left, right? Because they might not want to even talk to that person who messed up in customer success or customer service or the salesperson, So get a third party. And if you can't find a third party, just hire somebody, some survey group, a very competent survey group. But it's really best to do it yourself if you can,
You've answered my other question, which was, if I was the account manager responsible for that relationship and it kind of broke down, I'm feeling a bit reticent, but you've given me another lens through which to look at it. I think that's a brilliant way of looking at it. We don't want them, ruining our reputation in the marketplace. But
No.
but what you're saying is it's okay if someone else does it for me, that reaches out to my client, even though I was assigned to that client. It was my client relationship. They know me. They bought into me.
Mm-hmm.
It broke down at the end for whatever reason. We think we want to do a win back. So to approach them, it doesn't have to necessarily be me.
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be you. And sometimes it might be better if it isn't you, because they might open up more. I mean, the key is that the person who talks has got to be able to make people feel comfortable, make them feel open to sharing negative feedback. And I can give you one trick on that if you'd like, real fast.
Please.
If you say, where did we go wrong? When you say something, now there's a bit of heaviness as far as criticism goes. But if you say, I'd really like to understand where we went wrong. It could have been A or B or C. Now they're choosing from a menu that you said, and it's a lot easier for them to either say which it is or say, actually, it's a combination of 2 and 3. And credit where credit goes due for that. I learned that from a gentleman named Brian Matamore, and he sold literally he's an ideation expert. He's literally sold like $4.5 billion based on his stuff. Yeah, he did like hundreds of millions with a Pepsi launch, and he consults with Amazon and stuff. Brilliant man. Anyway, that was the one thing that he thought was smart.
Absolutely love that tip, because you're right. If, and might be because a lot of British people, we're a little bit reserved. So if someone says, however vulnerable they come, can you just please be really honest about why? they might still be a little bit reticent. So culturally, I think that's a lovely idea. It's a good tip. Give them three options and ask them to choose. Dan, this has been so content rich. I'm so pleased. And I know that everyone's going to find it valuable. Tell us a bit about how you work with companies. Who do you typically work with and how do you help them?
Well, I typically work with work with companies that have been around for at least 3 years, and they've lost at least 10% of their clients a year, so that there's a good sized pool to win back. It's generally consulting. I will work with you. The thing is that I just show you like what we do is we work with various models. Like we talked about the propensity model, the predictive revenue model, the root cause model. We feed everything in to these models to understand where you are. Then we do a test win back campaign because all this is like intentional, right? People say they'll come back because of this, but when you start seeing people come back, then you do the win loss and you find out really why they come back. And we feed these things into the model so basically what we do is we run everything through the models. Then we do a test to see what the reality is. We refine the models and we refine the win back campaign, and then we roll it out to customers. That's basically how I operate. And then after we do 2 iterations of this, you know everything you need to know about your clients and how to continue to refine the process. That's basically how I work.
Great. And there's something I didn't ask you just to clarify. When you go out with your win-loss analysis, why did you leave us?
Mm-hmm.
You're then you're going back to the same people after that when they tell you why they left. You're going back with the offer, aren't you, to the exactly same clients?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So that you're contacting them twice effectively to say thank you
Yeah.
for the feedback. Here's some other feedback and we've addressed it. And then you go out with an offer.
Yep. And if they're larger customers, like everything's like, I guess there's one more thing I should really say is that you treat your high value customers. Um, you want to understand them really, really, really well compared to your average value customers. So if you're a I don't know, if you're an agency and maybe most of your customers generate X, but then there's this small little group that you've lost that generate 20X, you want to get on the phone with them and send them whatever it'll take to actually engage with them. And you want to understand really why they left and what it'll take to win them back. Because you might want to create specific offers for them that were really compelling for them to come back, right? I mean, you know so much about them, your big clients. You've worked with them closely. There's so much information you can gather about them, and then when you get verification or validation or new information as to why they left, what it'll take to win them back, see what you can do to create that package to get them back. And then when you get them back, you can go to other big clients to say they trusted us to come back to us and they're happy now. And there's a story about a guy who did that. His company was delisted from NASDAQ, and he went after these 5 huge telcos that they had lost. And he did this with the first one, and then he got all the other 5 back. And he turned the whole company around. They got relisted on the NASDAQ, record earnings. So this is powerful stuff. Okay. Take a good hard look at your biggest customers first.
Thank you, Dan. This is brilliant. If people want to get hold of you to discuss their win-back campaigns, what's the best way of reaching you?
Dan at winbacklabs.com. And if you want to learn a lot more, I'm on LinkedIn, Dan M. Pfister. And I got a lot of articles. And I've got the book, $1 Billion Win Back. It basically's got everything you just heard and 3 or 4 levels deeper.
Fantastic, Dan. Thank you so much. I'm following you and I'm finding it really valuable. So I'll put all of those notes and connections in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jenny. Great to be here.